Welcome to Deposit Your Doubt. This isn't a space of judgment, but a sanctuary for spiritual exploration. Here, your questions aren't threats to faith, they're invitations to deeper understanding. I'm Krystal, and I've learned that our most profound moments of spiritual growth often bloom in the uncertain terrain between what we know and what we are still discovering. Every doubt you carry is welcome here. Every wrestling match with belief is sacred. This podcast is your soft landing, your grace-filled conversation, your reminder that questioning doesn't mean breaking, it means becoming. This idea of depositing your doubt is something that's been rumbling in my heart for quite a while. For me personally, it was a journey of realizing that my doubting of God's plans or decisions in my life did not diminish His majesty or who He was, and it also didn't negate how He felt about me. The true working out of my relationship with Him and the ability to grow it even more had everything to do with me questioning Him so that I could grow deeper rather than keeping everything to myself. I'm no less of a believer because I question what He's doing in my life. And He is no less God when He doesn't do what I want Him to do. Any time that I started to doubt God, everything I knew about Him held true. What didn't hold true were the constructs that people tried to sell me about Him. If you grew up in a home where Christian ideology was introduced to you, likely what was exhibited as part of that was through a body of believers or the church. I grew up in a pastor's home. My dad also grew up in a pastor's home. So the roots of church and the dedication to church run deep. So deep. If you go to church and your dad is the pastor, how can you ever say that you don't agree 100% with what the church does? When I moved away from home and I realized the statement of making your faith your own was the true identity of what I was doing, I really dove into that. I want something to be really clear about me as you listen to this podcast. I want you to know where I'm coming from. I'm not a girl who left the faith that she was raised in. The God my parents gave me in my upbringing is still the God I have a relationship with, and I love Him deeply. However, I am a girl who questioned some of the constructs the denomination I grew up in held closely. I'm a girl who found some wonderful practices with the Lord in another denomination. But even there, I have questioned reasonings behind constructs that they've shown me. As I have made my faith my own, I found that so much of what was given to me of the Lord was wonderful. But some of what was demonstrated to me by the quote-unquote people of God that I went to church with was the farthest thing from the God I knew. In my adult life, I would begin to see things and be able to put to words that what I was seeing did not reconcile with the God I knew in my heart. In this podcast, I will work through some of those things with you. Quite honestly, I have needed a space to talk about this. And in the honest conversations that I've had leading up to this podcast, I know there are other people deep in their faith and religious institutions that are questioning things too. And the majority of us are afraid to question. We're afraid that showing we doubt something about our faith or our God or His will for us will mean that we aren't really believers. Or it'll show a crack in this perfect armor that we've concocted. But I'm here to tell you, it's okay to question. And in fact, I have found that my faith and your faith is made stronger when you question, when you doubt. I've made some big statements here. And I want to leave you with some points today to ruminate over before we meet again. One of the first things that I said is that questioning God does not diminish His majesty. He's no less God in my life or anyone else's because I question something He's doing. David comes to my mind every single time I think about this because the Psalms are full of his lament, yet nothing about his lament changed who God was. Many of David's Psalms contain honest, sometimes raw questions directed at God. Psalm 22:1 begins, my God, why have you forsaken me?" If anyone ever gave us permission to ask God questions, it was David. David knew God was listening when he prayed. He knew God was there, yet he felt like God had forsaken him. When I look up the word forsaken in the dictionary, it defines it as renouncing or turning away from completely. Like, really? That's what David felt. Why would God do that to his children? Would he completely turn away from them or renounce them? It just seems so intense for a God of love. You can feel all the feelings. You can have all the emotions, and God will still be God. Your lament, your passionate expression of any emotion that you have will not change how great He is, and how strong He is, and how magnificent He will continue to be in your life. True faith includes space for genuine emotional expression. I don't know about you, but I need to know that. I need to know that it's okay that I have a lot of emotion about something. It's okay that I question God and that I wonder what He's doing. And it's okay when I bring all of that to Him, because He doesn't become less than. He is still just as magnificent as He was before I started questioning Him. I need to know that I can bring all of that to Him. Another thing that I said to you earlier is that I've noticed that my questioning does not change how God feels about me. He doesn't get exasperated when I wonder what He's doing. He doesn't get mad at me or want to punish me because I don't immediately go along with what He says or the cards that He's dealt for me. One of the most poignant examples of this is from the book of Job. Specifically in Job 38 to 42, in those chapters you can see this. After Job has lost everything, his children, his wealth, his health, he's endured lengthy debates with his friends. He questions God's justice and asks, "Why am I suffering?" Rather than punishing Job for his questions, God responds by engaging with him directly. God's initial response to Job began with challenging questions that highlight Job's limited understanding compared to God's infinite wisdom. And this also happens with us. But the example that God gives here is Job's questioning all of these things, and God says to him, "Where were you when I laid the earth's foundation?" And honestly, if you talk about a gut check, if God had said that to me after I'm questioning Him, I think I would be like, okay, you're right. You have a perspective that I don't have. But this interaction ultimately demonstrates God's deep care for Job. God listens to Job's pain, He addresses him personally, and in the end, He restores and blesses Job abundantly. The conclusion in Job 42:12 shows God's loving response. The Lord blessed the latter part of Job's life much more than the former part. Not only did God restore Job's fortunes, but He gave him twice as much as he had before, new children and a long life. What's really meaningful about this account is that God didn't condemn Job for his questions or doubts. Instead, He engaged with Job personally, helped him gain a broader perspective, and ultimately showed His love through both presence and restoration. It demonstrates that God can handle our questions and our doubts, and often responds to them not with anger, but with loving patience and care. I don't know about you, but I need that. I need to be able to bring these questions to God. I need to look at the things in my life that He's doing, that He's not doing, and ask, God, why? And really, when things are hurtful, I need to cry out to Him. I need to be able to say to Him how I really feel. And I need Him to show up with care and with patience. And when I read the story of Job, I see that that's what He did for Job. Someone that we have categorized as a person who lost everything, who lost the most. But that's how God showed up for Job. So we've talked about how I have seen that when I question God, when I doubt Him, when I doubt something that He's doing in my life, it doesn't diminish His majesty. He is still God. And it also doesn't change how He feels about me that I want to question Him. When we come back, I will give you another point of what I think is happening in our relationship with the Lord when we question Him. And I will lay a bit of the groundwork for what you can expect through Deposit Your Doubt moving forward. Hey, podcast listeners, let me tell you about the game changer that slashed our family's phone bill, Mint Mobile. Years ago, we were paying a ridiculous wireless bill. You know the feeling, those massive monthly bills that make you want to throw your phone across the room. Well, we were done. And then we discovered Mint Mobile. This isn't just another wireless carrier. Mint Mobile is like the superhero of mobile plans. We switched and we have never, and I mean never, looked back. We're talking premium wireless service at prices that'll make your wallet do a happy dance. Right now, they've got an incredible deal. Sign up today and get 1 month free on their 3-month 5 GB plan. And here's the cherry on top. Use my referral link and you will score $15 in renewal credit. That's money back in your pocket. Think about it. The money you save, use it to buy me lunch, grab a coffee, treat yourself to something nice. Because Mint Mobile just made your wireless life so much easier. Switch now. Trust me, your bank account will thank you. Make the smart move. Go to stan.store/crystalribble and click on the Mint Mobile Superhero button. That's stan.store/crystalribble and click on the Mint Mobile Superhero. Mint Mobile, wireless that doesn't rob you blind. We've been talking about how questioning God or doubting God does not diminish His majesty. It doesn't change who He is still God. And we've also been talking about how when you do that, when you question Him, it does not change how He feels about you. But one of the other things that I have noticed, and this kind of parlays perfectly into the last thing, is that I've noticed that my questioning leads to deeper intimacy with God. This is why I am telling you that there is a deposit to your doubt. You take that doubt and you are investing it into this relationship that you have with the Lord. And my belief, in my experience, is that that investment continues to grow. That's why it's a deposit. That's why we shouldn't be afraid of it. The stories that I talked about earlier from the Bible, both with David and Job, they are relentless examples of how questioning God and truly wrestling with what He's giving you leads to greater intimacy in your relationship with Him. Think about your own life. The people that you're the closest to, the people that you have the most intimacy with, those are the people that you show your true self. You're not afraid that when you tell them the deepest recesses of your mind, that they're going to walk away from you. And if you get hurt or life throws some pressure your way and you lash out in response to that, usually these are the people that get the most of that. They get the brunt of that. But you're not afraid that they're going to think less of you because you are closest to them. It really is kind of a tragedy, I guess, but also not a tragedy, that the people that we are the most comfortable with are the ones that can get the worst of us. I talk about this a lot in my home when our 3-year-old just has trouble with his emotions. It really is an honor that he will show me the worst emotions that he has because he feels the most comfortable with me. I am the safest place for him. So when he feels something so deeply, he can show me and my husband exactly how he feels when he may hold all of that in otherwise. This is exactly how our relationship should be with the Lord. He should be the closest to us. He's also big enough to handle when we lash out at him. In fact, I would submit to you that he expects us to. If anyone knows our humanity and the bounds in which we can function, it would be God. He knows when we are being dealt situations that push us to our limits. He expects us to react from our humanity. When you join me next time, I am going to lay out the hardest thing that I have been through in my faith. I'm going to tell you the story, and I'm going to give you a warning now. I likely cannot do it without crying. But it's a good example of when I was at my lowest in my faith and what happened with me and the Lord through that. what happened with my questioning, what happened with my doubts, and why I see all of those things differently now within my faith journey. This story that I'm going to tell you, I often describe it to people as I went through a situation with the Lord where if I could paint a physical picture for you, it was as if the Lord was standing in front of me and I was so mad and I was taking my fist and I was wailing on his chest and he didn't move. He stood there with all the love in the world for me. I was his child. I was hurt and I couldn't see what he could see. So he gave me grace. He let me feel what I wanted to feel. This exact scenario still happens in my relationship with God now. I'm not always as feisty as I was then. And again, the next time that we're together, I'm going to tell you all about that. But even if I'm not as feisty and I don't pound on him as hard all of the time, I'm not afraid to if that's what I need. And he doesn't leave me when I feel that way. What's really beautiful about our doubting and our questions is that we're not alone. I have found that when we are scared of something or uncertain, we often hide what we really think and feel. But if we ever have the courage to talk about it, someone somewhere is saved because we showed the courage. And most of the time, more people are thinking what you are thinking. We are rarely alone. In case you're worried, you are no less a believer when you question God. In fact, I would say you're more of a believer. You're working out your faith and you're trying to find what he is doing in your life. Depositing this doubt, making an investment with the questions. It's what leads to growth in your walk with him. I'm inviting you to this space to lay your soul bare. Gather up some of the things that I talk about here and let them prop you up in your walk. At the end of each episode, I will leave you with some theological insights that you can sort of just think about, write down, ruminate over until we meet again. And I hope that they help you kind of sort out some of the uncertainty in your faith, some of the uncertainty in your life, and give you a ground to start talking to the Lord about those things. The first thing that I want to give you is questioning God is not equivalent to doubting God's existence. Take some time and go read Habakkuk 1, specifically verses 2 through 3. He says there, "How long, O Lord, will I call for your help and you will not hear? I cry out to you, violence, yet you do not save. Why do you make me see iniquity and cause me to look on wickedness? Yes, destruction and violence are before me. Strife exists and contention arises." Habakkuk is questioning God here about the apparent injustice in the world, and maybe you feel the same. Our world today can be described similar. But this questioning that Habakkuk did not imply a denial of God's existence. Rather, it demonstrated a desire for understanding and resolution. The next thing I want to leave you with is authentic faith includes intellectual and emotional wrestling. Psalms 13, verses 1 through 2 say, "How long, O Lord, will you forget me forever? How long will you hide your face from me? How long shall I counsel in my soul, having sorrow in my heart all the day? How long will my enemy be exalted over me?" The psalmist expresses emotional turmoil here and intellectual questioning, which reflected the complex nature of authentic faith that involves wrestling with both the heart and the mind. I also want to leave you with, God invites honest dialogue and relationship. If you go read Isaiah 1, specifically verses 18, when it says, "Come now, let us reason together, says the Lord. Though your sins are like the scarlet, they shall be as white as snow. Though they are red like crimson, they shall become like wool." God invites us here into a conversation, encouraging honest dialogue. The invitation to reason together shows that God values open communication and relationship. And then the final thing, mature faith allows for complexity and depth of understanding. Go read 1 Corinthians 13:12. "For now we see in a mirror dimly, but then face to face. Now I know in part, but then I will know fully, as I have also been fully known." This verse acknowledges the current limitations of human understanding, suggesting that mature faith embraces the complexity of life and theology, trusting that full understanding will come later. The overarching biblical message today suggests that God values honest, heartfelt communication more than superficial compliance. I want to say that again. God values honest, heartfelt communication more than superficial compliance. That was what I struggled with growing up. People would show me superficial compliance, and I knew that was not real. It has been my experience that when I question God and I approach Him with respect and a genuine desire to understand, it can actually deepen my relationship with Him rather than diminish His majesty. The key is the heart's posture, where questions are asked from a place of humility, reverence, and genuine seeking, not from a position of defiance or rejection. Thank you for spending some time with me today. As we wrap up, I want to speak directly to those of you who might be wrestling with some hard questions. The doubts that you're feeling, the moments where you are not sure about God or your faith, they're not just normal, they're sacred. They're sacred spaces where real transformation can happen. Remember, God isn't intimidated by your questions. He's big enough to handle your doubts and tender enough to hold your heart while you work through them. So instead of pushing those feelings down, I want to encourage you to bring them into the light. Take them to God. Sit with them. Let Him meet you right there in that vulnerable place. Until next time, keep being brave enough to ask the hard questions, gentle enough with yourself to acknowledge your struggles, and open enough to let God surprise you with His answers. If this episode resonated with you, remember to subscribe, share with someone you know who might need to hear it, and leave a review. It helps other seekers find our little community.
This podcast is produced by Told You So Media.
Told you so!